welcome, everyone. As you're coming through, I'm very honored and excited for tonight. We have a couple special guests, but I'm going to start with some just housekeeping here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do want to highlight a few courses we are doing new here at IDM. Through our study club, you can find these through our main page. So I'm going to show you that here. We're going to be able to offer some new CE courses, and they're entry-level courses. We do offer both through Dr. Whit Wilkerson and myself, these 1-hour CE bundles. So you can go right to our courses, hit on the 1-hour CE, and you're going to be able to see these new courses that we just launched, the Biofilm to Breakthrough. A lot of people ask me, what are actually the hand skills? How do I actually break up that biofilm? So I walk through step by step the actual clinical procedures in breaking that biofilm up. And then on the other side, we have Dr. Whit Wilkerson's Airway, you see there, and Sleep Solutions, kind of walking you through the same thing. What are those clinical steps that we can be taking? And we offer that in a bundle. So I just want to share that with everyone tonight. You can go through there, you'll see those come out, and they are found again under our education, under those 1-hour CE courses. So as everyone's coming in tonight, I am going to introduce our special speakers here that we have as we all talk about the connectedness between the mouth and the body. I couldn't be more honored to introduce our guests that we have. And so tonight I have the honor of introducing a thought leader many of you know as the Urban Monk. This is Dr. Pedram Shojai. His work has been transformative in showing us how ancient wisdom, modern science converge to create real health breakthroughs. And so Dr. Shojai is a man with many titles. He is the founder and director of Urban Monk Academy. He is New York Times best-selling author of books Rise and Shine, The Urban Monk, The Art of Stopping Time, Inner Alchemy, Exhausted, Trauma, Focus, and dear to my heart, Conscious Parenting. He is the producer of movies Vitality, Origins, Prosperity, and The Great Heist, and the docu-series, which we're going to hit home on tonight, Interconnected, Gateway to Health, Exhausted, Trauma, Conscious Parenting, Hormones, Health, and Harmony, and of course, Gut Check. He is the host of the Urban Monk podcast, so everyone go find him out there. He is a key influencer in health and personal development space. He is a prominent physician in functional medicine and is known for his ability to bring people together around ideas that matter. Doing all of this, he is still probably one of the most chill guys you'll meet. He lives up in the mountains and values his days on how much time he gets with his family. As a former monk, he strives to bring enlightenment and peace to the world around him. But before I let him jump in and start talking, I do want to tell a little story. We have another Dr. Shojai on here as well, and that is his wife. I call her Dr. Elmira. And I got to meet Dr. Elmira through saliva testing. We were on a webinar together, and I have to tell you, for those of you out there, we just became kindred spirits. You know, when you meet somebody and you're like, oh my God, she's a like-minded colleague like me, and we just connected. And that connection grew into really collaborating together and where we are today. And I couldn't be more grateful for really meeting you, Dr. Elmira, and everything that you're doing. And so before we let your husband, I know he's the star of the show, but I am going to pick on you, Dr. Elmira, that just how you brought this even into the Urban Monk and everything that you're doing there with the oral microbiome testing. And you and I talk a lot about gut check. I'm going to kind of let you tell our audience here just what you're doing there at the Urban Monk. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Laura. Hello, everyone. What my connection with the Urban Monk and the Interconnected series happened is we did produce a 10-part docuseries called Interconnected. And while producing that and talking with all the leaders in functional medicine, there was always something missing. And as a dentist watching that and going through all of our patients always looking for answer, there was never a connection made. There was always theories. Yes, there were studies done, but there was nobody had ever done an educational series for regular person in public to be able to get actually educated and realize what is the connection between the gut health and the oral health, which led to us actually producing the docu-series called Gateway to Health. And we went around and interviewed a lot of dentists, a lot of functional medicine doctors, and kind of we picked everyone for the public realized stop separating mouth and the rest of the body. They are connected. And through this docuseries, we actually wanted to be able to educate the public. Is your gum bleeding? There is a lot more happening when you see your gum bleeding. It's not just the mouth. Let's all educate ourselves and connect everything. And we do have gut programs with those patients realizing, yes, we do need saliva testing because with their gut permeability, we need to help them because it's all connected, which led me to look for a good company that I can trust and led me to you, Laura.
Awesome. And our community is, look at all the people loving on you already. Yes, if you caught that, Dr. Elmira is a dentist. This is for us in our community, a match made in heaven. Yes, a functional medicine doctor with a dentist. So couldn't be happier to bring this type of collaboration to our community. I'm grateful to have you here. And Dr. Pedram Shojai, I'm going to let you take over to educate us and let us know how we can collaborate, because I think that's the biggest piece most of us have been missing for our patients. Just simple, great answers that the two of you can bring for all of us.
An honor to be here. Really appreciate the work that you're doing. I want to be very forthcoming with the praise because you are on the cutting edge of something very interesting. And to be clear, again, I'm not a dentist, so I'm a functional medicine guy who used to have a lot of hair. I've been around the block on this, right? So I've seen a lot on the functional medicine side, multiple clinics, and then just a lot of case volume, looking at the data of stuff coming through. And so really parked into this area of gut health. A couple of years ago when we did the first series, we've done 3 series on gut health at this point and have followed this story. And you know, the problem everyone here probably is already aware of is it's very hard to access functional medicine for the patient population. You know, we'd send them to ifm.org and they'd say, well, you know, I found someone who could see me in 9 months and they're going to charge me 15 grand worth of testing. And, you know, life moves faster than the cycle of pain that these folks are going through. And so we ended up having to throw our hat in the ring. And I went to the Sandy over the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy and said, hey, I really need some coaches that know what they're doing. And we're going to create lifestyle programs around gut health. And it's a very challenging lane to navigate in because I'm not allowed to practice medicine in 50 states. You know, there's a lot of rules around health coaching. And so we had to create formulaic algorithms and say if X, then Y type of thing. But in doing so, said, okay, we could help a broad strokes of maybe 80% of these people. The results have been incredible. Turns out if you start healing someone's gut, it goes a long way. And then that's when Elmira and I, and this series that we produced is just about to see the light of day. As we were releasing it, this thing called the coronavirus came out. And it's bad time to launch a movie. So we landed the plane. And so we've really built the infrastructure around it. And we're coming out with it in the next few weeks. I'm happy to give a screener to anyone here. We interviewed a lot of the top functional dentists and deans of the universities and, fancy folks in your space, right? But the narrative is very, very interesting, and it's about the connection. And I'll show the trailer to it. The connection between the mouth, which we call the gateway to health, and the rest of the body. So respectfully, I think our time best served, and I'll leave time for questions just because I don't know this room, but and I'm flexible, right? But I will kind of talk about what we've been doing on the gut health side, how it's been impacting our patient population, our client population, and what our current initiatives are to bring in oral health, we have our own version of the saliva testing now. It's a little blurry. And so we're going to be doing a lot of saliva testing, matching it with gut permeability, food sensitivity testing, and coming up with a complete picture. And I think there's a couple pieces there that we'll talk about in terms of cardiometabolic data that are important, because we're seeing really interesting long-term outcomes that are alluding to really, positive things for chronic disease in general, right? Just fixing this stuff. So it's not conjecture, it's really interesting science that's coming out of all this. And it's fun. It's fun to be a part of, at least for a nerd like me. So I'll jump into the slides. Let's see if I could get things right here. Let me go back and make sure this is presenting. Give me a second. Whoop. Is that playing? Can you see this screen? Can you see the screen? Great. I'm going to turn it up.
Something that's finally actually taking hold.
We can't separate the human body. We're all one system, and we have to think of it in a systems biology approach where everything's connected to everything else.
There are thousands and thousands of studies emerging showing various pathways that disease in the mouth is indeed very connected to disease in the body, and that disease ranges from Alzheimer's disease to cancer.
So when we have patients coming in, we are paying very, very close attention to what their gums look like, what their teeth look like.
If you could see the devastation of moderate to advanced gum disease or rampant decay, you know that the organisms that are causing this do not just stay in the mouth.
And we have evidence that, yes, you can find these bacteria that are in the mouth in these distant sites. We have shifted the microbiome to more disease-producing properties than what it had at one point in time.
So the mouth is the first area that we can identify and screen for what's the bacterial population like.
This is about this interconnection with our human cells and this flora that creates this perfect synergy.
I think we should change our mindset around what the dentist is thinking about.
We have to be more of a systemic oral specialist. We have to be very aware of the oral systemic connection.
Depending on that person's overall health, their nutritional status, their immune system. So it really is about creating overall health, which creates overall dental health.
So that was the trailer. The series is a 6-part or 8-part series. I don't know, it's big. And we've interviewed, we have a lot of key interviews around this topic. And it's really designed for the public. It's not designed for dentists. It's designed for the public to understand why they need to look out for their mouth and why beyond, being browbeaten into flossing, there's a lot more they need to be talking to their dentist about. And so what we really are mapping together now is the connection between the gut microbiome, oral microbiome, and all of the signaling and the communications between all of them. So let me just make sure I can do this. There we go. So the obvious elephant in the room is that chronic disease is skyrocketing, right? This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone in this room, but it's a very big deal. And the question is why? And the thesis here is that, and I could give you reams of studies that we've compiled for our patient population, for the doctors that we work with, is that the smoking gun is endotoxemia. And this thing called endotoxemia that comes from gram-negative bacteria pushing these lipopolysaccharides across a permeable, semi-permeable gut membrane or gums creates everything from autoimmunity to really bad systemic neuroinflammation and everything else. So this is where we're going to really focus on. This is where we focus in our, someone needs to mute. Sorry, if we could, whoever's running the show, if you could just mute. Thank you. And then I don't know why my slides aren't moving. There we go. So what we have been really harping on is looking at the organisms that we harbor from our mouth all the way through. There are different organisms that, say, Laura and Dr. Elmira are looking at in the saliva tests that come up in the reds and the kind of color schema that they've come up with. And in the gut, we're finding all sorts of bad, nasty players that are causing a lot of these problems. But one of the things that we began doing clinically back in, say, 2019, when everyone got really excited about the gut microbiome, is we just started doing all these fancy tests on everybody. And it turns out pretty much everyone coming in off the street was a mess. And so we would then put them on elimination provocation diets, clean up their act, and then retest. And lo and behold, 60, 70, 90% better. And then we had a lot more signal strength on things that we could work with. And that became a real aha moment in terms of clinical relevance to me, is if I can identify what particular foods and additives and substances that your body has already started throwing antibodies against and get you to avoid those foods, and then we put them on a modified elimination provocation diet, which is, take out the bigs. And again, I don't know how much people know about functional medicine here. So if this is pedestrian, I'm sorry. I'll just kind of cover broad strokes here, right? So you're taking out the gluten, the dairy, the sugar, the corn, the soy, the alcohol, the additives, and all those, and kind of a generalized elimination provocation diet. But then we do these tests where we look at 176 other foods and substances. And I didn't know I had a sensitivity to honeydew. And the problem is these aren't IgE mediated responses. IgE is you're falling on the ground, someone's looking for Benadryl. You probably know you have an IgE response at this point. IgG and IgA has anywhere from a 1 to 4 day latency period. So I don't know, why am I moody today? Why do I have brain fog? Did I not have enough coffee? Am I annoyed at my spouse? I mean, there's just way too many variables between when the input hits you and what you're feeling now to really get a sense and clear signal on causality. And so as we started doing this and identifying foods that were harming this patient population, immediately you had incredible amount of resolution from all forms of inflammation, including gums, right? And then we looked at 4 markers in the gut. It was zonulin, still is, zonulin, occludin, candida, and LPS, lipopolysaccharides. And getting this snapshot really helped us understand what the current state of their gut permeability was and is, and where we have to start. And I know Laura and Dr. Elmira have different algorithms for if you start, you got to start this way in the mouth and do certain things and then make progress. I can't speak to that because, again, I'm not a dentist and I stay in my lane. But I can tell you in the gut world, it's very hard to fix dysbiosis if you have candida overgrowth. And so we end up having to deal with that first. And so really learning how to stage and segment these interventions in a meaningful way and then retest has become incredibly important, because that is what really, frankly, we're here to move the needle. And just giving people probiotics is primitive at this point. You have to fix the terrain, you have to fix the ecology. And a lot of that falls back on enzymatic insufficiency. So protease, amylase, lipase, there's a lot of things that we end up having to do to get the digestive capacity up. And a lot of times it's hydrochloric acid because they just can't assimilate the meats. And so there's a lot around that we've been dealing with. And obviously, where you all come into this room and are kind of playing a central role is, whether it's you or your hygienist, or if you're the hygienist, you're getting a look inside of this. You're looking at the mucosa, right? You're looking at the gums. You are getting really kind of front row seat at seeing the state of this, as the mouth is the gateway. And so we are working pretty diligently to get screening put into some of the clinics that are already learning this, so that we're already mapping cardiometabolic function. As soon as you bring down inflammation in the gut lining and the gums, all of a sudden you start to see all sorts of miraculous stuff happen in healthcare. And I think this has been really a missing ingredient in where functional dentistry is going to start to really shine. Is no one's got time to look at this stuff, but you all are already looking, right? So it's really an important point. Is an inflection point, really, I think, in where this industry can go. And some of the stuff that we started doing. Look, I'm a mind body guy. I was a monk for years, and it's one thing to browbeat people and say you don't meditate enough. They're stressed out, they're beat up, they're inflamed, and so we've been using vagus nerve stimulators to really help calm down the vagus nerve. It's been monumental in getting us to bring down specifically secretory IgA, which is mediated, by stress response, and bringing down systemic inflammation, which has given us meaningful lift on some of these protocols and algorithms that we have. The arc of what we did is we did this first series called Interconnected back in 2019. The irony is it was ahead of its time. It did really well at the time, and now I can't stop the flow of people coming in watching this. So right now we have like 30,000 people a month coming in, and my ads team they could triple it next week. And so our problem is because we have health coaching, and there's a lot of infrastructure issues. There are so many people with gut health problems. We followed it in partnership with Microbiome Labs with another project called Gut Check, and then did the Gut Check action plan with Dr. Jeff Bland, who's the father of functional medicine. And then of course we have Gateway to Health, which is the oral health series that I'm happy to share with you all and screen it. It's 6 parts, and they're speaking your language, right? And so as we have created these assets and as we have gotten these out to the public, what we've realized is nobody has time, definitely in medicine, to talk about this stuff. And your patients, I mean, they got their mouths open and you got a mask on. It's like there's just not enough time to talk about this stuff. And so this form of direct-to-consumer education that is spoken in their language, there's like a translational piece, right, where the doctors talk about stuff, and I or Nicole Berkins, or one of our hosts, will translate it, has really gotten people who have been stuck trying to navigate the system into a much better place. And they go in asking for care. They go in as an informed consumer, and not the type that has just been Googling stuff, but we create a ton of resources that have really been supportive of them. What we've been doing, and we are constantly layering more, is we did a partnership with KBMO, which does the 176 foods, plus zonulin, occludin, LPS, and Candida. And then for our clients that take on more coaching, we do GI map. We do cardiometabolic assays through Avexia. And then obviously we do the orobiome for anyone who has any oral tie-in. I'd like to throw it in on every patient at this point. And so the data is really, really intriguing, right? And that's what I'm trying to map, is what's the correlation between oral microbiome, gut microbiome, symptomology, and cardiometabolic. And that's kind of the next frontier of what we're looking at here. And it's already giving us interesting signal just looking at the studies that are mapping together. And so I won't say any more because let's do the science, but there's some really interesting stuff coming through. The orobiome I mentioned, this is something that you all know about because we work with Simply Perio, and we work with dentists across the country, but we're always looking for dentists because at the end of the day, and I don't want to misspeak to how they all do it, but say it's some sort of red complex and they got to go in, that there's an antibiotic regimen, there's a specific cleaning regimen. So they have to communicate with the treating dentist to go in, do some pre-work, do some post-work, do some probiotics on the front, probiotics on the back. So it becomes a real team effort in how we are addressing these. And in doing so, I mean, it takes a village, because even within the industry, we just had something, someone recommended some mouthwash that was too toxic within the ecosystem. And so like, here's Laura trying to educate someone on the new science of the oral microbiome. It turns out and again, I'll speak for the gut, is it becomes much more an ecological model than a linear model. And the example that we use in the gut, and Mark Hyman and Jeff Bland have been in this conversation for a long time, is you think of the wolves of Yellowstone. When the wolves were gone, they were an apex predator, keystone species. When the wolves were decimated, the elk were destroying the riverbeds and literally changing the direction of the flow of the river. The entire forests were moving, things were getting swampy and marshy, and the ecology was falling apart because of the keystone species were not there. They reintroduced the wolves, the elk ran away, and nature restored, and all the riverbanks came back to where it needed to be. And this ecological vision of how medicine and oral care and all of these things around the microbiome need to be addressed, I think it's a revolution in the way we think. And so it just takes a little while. It's a slow turning wheel for us all to understand, because we used to just nuke stuff, right? And so we are now doing a much different, highly supportive model of working with the terrain. Even if they have candida, it's like I can't just keep nuking them with herbals, botanicals, fluconazole. There's a lot of ways to answer this yeast issue, but it leaves the body and the rest of the microbiome decimated, and net, you still have a sick patient. And so how do we deal with this as we introduce certain beneficial species, and it becomes a battle of the bulge, really. It becomes a battle of the biofilm, and getting the biofilm of our favored species to really come back in, take root, and then feed them versus feeding the unfavorable species that tend to be more sugar-philic, right? And so that's kind of gut microbiome protocols. And again, broad strokes, right? And so, we'll put people through a 12-month program. It really, man, when I first started this, the patients are all busy and everyone doesn't want to go and spend money. And, we ended up spinning up a 3-month program, playing Let's Make a Deal with busy people. You just can't heal the gut unless it's a very low innocuous case. It's very hard to heal the gut microbiome in 3 months. It takes a minimum of 6 months. And what we ended up doing is saying, look, they have personalized diet, personalized supplementation, and coaching for the first 6 months. As we re-inoculate, we heal the gut barrier, we restore the microbiome diversity, and we take out some of the caustic players like the LPS producing bacteria, the gram-negative guys, the candida and such. But then we actually end up giving them group support for another 6 months, because you're only as good as your last trip to the fridge or the grocery store. And so a lot of this becomes a lifestyle problem, right? And so there's a lot of, and we can do everything right, but I can't follow them around. So there's a lot of behavioral mod that goes into fixing our patients. And you're getting people, grown-ups to brush their teeth still, right? And so there's a lot of personal hygiene, diet, and habit stacking that has to go into treating this patient population, for better or for worse, right? But we're starting to see all sorts of crazy things. And this is not novel for the functional medicine. We're seeing autoimmune diseases going into remission. We're seeing diabetes turning around, brain fog easy, people are getting their brains back, IBS, IBD, Crohn's, even there's some really interesting stuff around autism and autism spectrum as you start changing the microbiome. There's some interesting research coming out now around Parkinson's and specific species in the microbiome that can be restored. This is just beginning. And, look, I've been around this conversation for a long time. And when it first came out, it's like, okay, we nailed it. We're done. We've got it all figured out. We'll be saying that for another 30 years, because as we start to come up with these boutique species and new studies come out, what we're realizing is, and this was, I'd say 5 years ago, someone would go research an isolated strain and say, holy crap, I found the strain that makes you skinny. I'm going to be rich, right? And so then all of a sudden you start mass producing this strain of a particular bug, and in isolation, very underwhelming. But when you find the family of strains that seem to be working together in a synergistic way to bring down the red complex in the mouth or to bring down anxiety in the system, that is now starting to become the new way. So there are these bundles of strains that work together, and the research is now starting to go into kind of like the microbiome cocktail era, right? And that's where we're starting to see some incredible results with really difficult recalcitrant like patient populations. So that's exciting, right? Because I've been around the block. Chronic disease hasn't been that solvable, has it, right? And so lifestyle has always been the missing ingredient, but now we have a hook into some very powerful data on this front that's really helping us. So I think there's a lot of places we can integrate, and I'm going to open up to discussion because I'm not here to sell anything. I'm just here to say, hey, we're doing a bunch of cool stuff, and I'd like to make sure that I'm tied in with the right people in the dentistry field that are also doing this stuff because the needs are arising. We're actually running into a lot of needs where it's like, who do I have in Wichita? I don't know, right? But we have patients showing up because we are a D2C player. We are broadcasting our media across the US, and people from all over the country are watching it. And so we're looking for referrals. We're looking for anyone who's interested in coordinating with gut protocols, especially if they're in your care and they have known gut issues. If we could coordinate doing gut protocols, and you can probe their perio and whatever testing you're doing on your side. And again, I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not the dentist, my wife is, but the data coming in on the gut side has been intriguing, tying that in with what's happening in oral health. And when we go to discussion, I'm sure Laura and Elmira have a lot to say about this. That's where I get really interested, because those protocols then become a big part of what else we can do. So I think we are in an era right now where we can actually bridge the gap. I talk about this with Mark Burhany all the time. He and I became friends, and he comes and skis with me. And there's this oral systemic connection starting to happen. The connection to chronic disease and endotoxemia is very clear. There's more and more studies on oral pathology and a lot of these chronic diseases coming through. I mean, obviously, some of the Alzheimer's and dementia, but there's also, there's links to all sorts of interesting stuff coming out every year. So I think this is the era where we gotta pull it together and share and track outcomes so that we can come to a better understanding of this thesis and really start to bring the mouth back into the body. I think you all have been compartmentalized for a long time, and the integration into a healthcare system at large might not sound appealing because healthcare is terrible, but this new model of functional healthcare and where the functional dentist sits kind of in the center of that room, I think should be at least nominally intriguing for anyone who's been practicing dentistry for a while, because I think you all have a pretty important role in this. And so, where I would say start screening is, look, chronic inflammation, any autoimmune conditions, metabolic dysfunction, cognitive decline, cardiovascular disease. These are all areas where the microbiome has very close correlation, if not causality, from LPS endotoxins or gums that are on fire. And so these are areas that we can quickly start to leverage and see beneficial outcomes. And these are all areas on people that I guarantee you had 6 of those today, right? Everyone's got this stuff. So why are we not coming in and intervening where we could? Right. So as I'm happy to give access, I think there was a type form or something to the Gateway to Health series, to the interconnect. I mean, any of our media, I'm happy to screen to you all. And if there are any opportunities for collaboration, anywhere we can educate, anywhere we can kind of jump in and work together, I'm 100% in. Not only am I married to a dentist, I've developed a lot of affinity for where the oral microbiome and where this medicine is going and where I think it can go if the mouth is brought back into this ecology. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room for optimism. I'm happy to answer any questions about what we're doing on our gut protocols, what we're seeing. And listen, it's not always clear cut. I mean, there's mold, there's mast cell activity. I mean, there's a lot of really crazy stuff happening out there in an increasingly toxic world. And we have to deal with it on the healthcare front, obviously. But again, you all are looking in their mouths, and I think that's a really interesting place to start because you get to see what the tissue looks like probably before their doctor will hear about it 10 years later. So I'll pause and invite Laura and Elmira back up, and any questions. I'm happy to go however you all want to go on this. I could do open Q&A. We could talk about the gut, whatever.
Awesome. I would love for people to drop in your questions. I know we did have a question already. I'm going to just acknowledge the first question there as more are coming in. Just said wonderful info, but how do we become part of the oral testing with you and to coordinate the gut protocols? So I feel like those are almost two questions. So I'll let you go ahead and answer that, how they could collaborate with you on those two pieces.
Yeah, I would say just DM me your email. I'll put you in touch with our team. The oral biome test is now ready to go. It's in action. And this one, basically what we're doing is we're doing oral gut protocols in conjunction, and we're training our health coaches. Laura is actually working with us to help our health coach gut team understand the oral side. And so her and Dr. Elmira have been working for a long time now, getting these protocols put into place. So we're happy to bring anyone into the fold. This is a very big problem, and we are all needing to jump in to solve it. And I think that this is just the beginning. So yeah, just send the email. We'll put you in touch with the right people, get you connected, give you links to how you can order it. And then depending on how you want to deploy, like we have health coaches that can help serve the gut people. We can send the oral health right back to you if you already have this training. If not, you could run through our team that does it and then send a report of findings back. It just kind of depends on how much you've drank out of this cup already.
Right. If they're already testing, then this is just an easy collaboration. I would say to all of my providers who are like, who can I collaborate with? That's not going to be like, oh, your dentist is crazy or your hygienist. He's laughing because right, he's going to acknowledge and be like, wow, great job. Your dentist tested you and support that. I think that's what a lot of us are looking for. But like you said, there's a whole nother aspect that most of our patients are sick beyond the mouth, and we're trying to get them right. Just some awareness. And I think that's one of the bigger pieces I want to share with the community is how much public awareness the two of you are creating, and just even complimentary education for the public to be able to help. So I wanted to kind of just put that out there. I do want to make a couple links. Dr. Elmira and I always talk about, we've talked about, most people don't understand the red complex species, and those are high risk, like AAPG, TFTD. They increase your lipopolysaccharides. So that's what we're talking about in this inflammation world. We know that LPS that they're looking at, right? We have a direct right connection there. We're always asking that number one question because it could be a multiple of variables, but we're always asking on the dental side, hey, is the mouth actually putting this body at risk? Is it contributing to some of this inflammatory process that's going on or risk that's going on? And most people don't realize that the zonulin, how much also these red complex, we know, even with our FN and FA, remember, those are directly tied to the gut. We have huge interplay going on, and why so many of our patients, right, we're always talking about oral and GI, because they're swallowing, as Dr. Pedram was talking earlier, they're swallowing so much of this. We have to understand that the toxins that are at play here. And then Candida, I think a lot of us don't realize how much Candida is really at play. both in the mouth and the gut. And so, just those three pieces, when we look at how much connection in what we're doing in the dental office and what you're doing, then be able to help with these patients. Because I always say, I always pick on PG, everybody with acid reflux. We're like, oh, we cleaned it out of the mouth, and then it's like coming right back up. I loved how Dr. Pedro was like, you're only as good as your next trip to the grocery store. I wrote that down as I was drinking my coffee over here. There's just so much, I think, to the story, but like you said, we need help on some of these pieces on support. And so I just think it's great to be able to bring that together. So Dr. Almira, I don't, whatever you want to add to that. I know you and I kind of have talked about the gut and the oral microbiome. For us, like Dr. Pedram was saying, is we're kind of on the infancy, kind of in dentistry. We're trying to do these like just with probiotics. I always want to give my dental community, that's a start. But it's definitely not the whole story or the finish line.
Um, it's actually for us also, just wanted to add on to it that after we do the testing, after we do the gut testing and the oral testing, then we have the health coach that really holds hand of to the patient and educates them. This is why you have to go back to your dentist. This is why you need to get something more than just a deep regular cleaning. And this is why you need to stay on this regimen of taking your antibiotics at the exact same time that we're telling you. So they kind of, because there's a lot of patients that also have dental anxiety, so there's a nice bridge between the actual human that translates to the doctor and the patient, this communication between the two to kind of take away the anxiety they get before they go to a dentist. And when they get to the dentist, it's actually, they're a lot more educated on what to expect when they go see their dentist, to know the role of their dentist and their overall health. And we do actually put the patients on the gut protocol to kind of get them really strong and ready, because we know we are going to put them onto antibiotics to get rid of all these red complexes if they have it. And then we're going to re-inoculate their oral microbiome with a healthy gut microbiome. So we're going to clean up the system all at the same time. But before they clean up, we do get their gut and their oral really strong before they get into their deep cleaning at the dental office.
That is just so key, so important. I think to have success going into the treatment so we don't have those side effects, we can actually be helping the patient through that journey. And then, especially after, our mission is to create health here. And I think just understanding kind of that three-step process is so beneficial. We do have some questions, so I want to make sure we get to these while we have both of you here. One of the questions was, I'm wondering if young children with gut problems and allergies would be helped with saliva testing and kind of looking at this protocol. What is the youngest age we could treat?
We've treated 6-year-olds. I mean, honestly, everyone from birth on, and the story is, C-section babies have some of the hardest challenges because they never got inoculated, and so I don't think it's too young. I think as soon as the baby is, beyond nursing, I mean, we've got oligosaccharides producing in the milk after mother's milk, even before that, I would have no problems testing. Right? There's nothing. There's no harm in testing, and we're testing our children as we speak. Right? It's like, hey, why is he so wild? Maybe he's having a reaction to food. It's really hard to know with IgG mediated response what the actual answer is until you see it. So yeah, I think we should be reaching way further back and preventing problems by testing children.
100% agree. I know a lot of us get hesitant on the dental side, waiting for some big sign or symptom in the mouth. But to me, that's true prevention, right? Catching things before we have to use things like antibiotics and all these aggressive kind of medical, I want to say, uh, you know, formularies that we have is let's catch them early and work on all these other things we're talking about: food, allergies, sleep, lifestyle, diet, stress. We're going to talk a little bit about airway. There is a question here in sleep, but I don't want to miss this. You have a direct question. I'm a Ayurvedic practitioner and believe in body as a whole. Would love to work with you and my clients with the saliva testing. What are your thoughts working with a Ayurvedic practitioner?
Yeah, listen, I'm a kitchen sink practitioner. I have kind of gone through, I mean, I studied Chinese medicine, I studied functional medicine, I went to a lot of Ayurvedic practitioners in India, and results talk. I just love pre and post testing and see what helps. And so Ayurveda's essential thesis, in my understanding of it, my humble understanding of it, is, it's very gut centric, and there's a lot of reinoculation. There's a lot of working with the migrating motor complex and a lot of things that get the digestive system working correctly. And I think Ayurveda's contribution to this part of functional medicine has been very soft spoken. And so I think Ayurveda deserves a central chair at that table, because Ayurveda has been doing this longer than everyone, right? Like this is a foundational piece of Ayurveda. So yeah, and I think much to my philosophy on all of this is use the objective data and see what gets results. And so if you're doing pre and posts and your Ayurvedic practices are working, why are you not documenting it? Everyone needs to know, right? So happy to work with whoever that was.
Awesome. So Laura will probably reach out to you. We have some chat going on about airway. I love it because we already have our dental colleagues like, yes, airway and sleep is so important. But I'm going to read you the question so we can address it. It says, are you incorporating sleep disordered breathing impact on the oral and gut microbiome? And have you hit roadblocks with patients after accounting for an elimination diet unless airway health is addressed? And then there's a second part.
So
Or there's
I'll give you a little a circuitous answer to this, just because it's fun. First of all, I used to own sleep labs, and so I'm very much into sleep medicine. I used to be very involved with the pulmonologists and the neurologists, and a big, obviously, advocate for making sure the airway is working. But how I ended up coming to the literature in endotoxemia was, we went to Portugal one summer, and I went weapons free on all of it because their gluten's fine, their dairy's fine, of course. And I came back and I couldn't sleep. And here's a guy who studied with the Dalai Lama, who could meditate pretty well. And I'm like, this isn't just a chattery mind. What is my body trying to tell me? And that's what led me to getting on PubMed instead of trying to fall asleep. And I found reams of literature on all of this. And so insomnia, direct downstream effect from endotoxemia, separate issue. Airway obstruction. Listen, unless you fix the mechanics of it in one way or another, you simply cannot keep the environment moist enough to harbor the proper colonies. And so I'm a fan of mouth taping if you could do it, but I mean, that doesn't solve all these problems. And so I think, and we're always looking for people that are doing the oral devices, anything you can to fix, adjust the airways. I was checking out a guy in Utah that was doing balloons and popping open inside the passages and getting the sphenoid to move. And there's a lot of weird stuff happening. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening, but the moral of the story is 100%. If you cannot run the air up the right pipes, you're drying out the nitrogen producing bacteria on the tongue. You're creating all sorts of downstream consequences that I don't think any probiotic's ever going to fix. Right now, you're putting band-aids on it. So I think airway is a critical piece of this.
And that's what really most of our testers, people who have been long-term testing, they understand that shift in the oral microbiome is always where we're looking for that red complex. Just to remind those that are testing, remember that TF, many times that Tannerella forsythia is that first sign of desaturation, like something's going on. We're having a shift from nasal breathing to mouth breathing, losing the ability to make that nitric oxide. So just kind of tying that in together. So airway, sleep, huge. And sometimes we do need to start there. Like you're saying, that could be one of the biggest sources for all these downstream, just like why your microbiome in the oral cavity is completely changing. So I love that we're bringing that up.
Can I make a point to this real quick, Laura? And this is just, I think, a really important thing. I say this a lot in my realm, right? But I think it applies in this one too, is we live in an era where everyone gives kind of single vector advice on a podcast and is like, no, it's your airway. No, it's your microbiome. No, it's this. It's all of it. And so, as responsible adults who are licensed to take care of these folks, we just got to get a big picture of everything that's going on, weigh all the evidence, and in a reasonable fashion, then find the best way through on this journey with this person. And so, you cannot say it's all the microbiome and not look at the airway. It all has to be factored into your decision-making matrix.
Love that. Somebody had a question about, can you touch on birth history's impact, C-section versus birth?
Yeah, so this is a big one, and this is one that is really jarring. Is we used to think that the baby was completely sterile, and now we know there's some microbiome inside the fluid before they even come out. But it turns out mom has been preparing baby by having sentinels in her own system and creating a very specific microbiome in the vaginal canal, predominantly in the third trimester. And that becomes baby's first natural vaccine as they're squeezed out of this tight tube, and they get these bacteria all in their eyes, their nose, their mouth, everything. That is the first inoculation. That is the microbiome starter colony for the baby. And that then primes baby's immune system to what mom's been exposed to in her environment, what mom has been exposed to recently with diseases and bugs and germs in the house and all of it. And that becomes critical information for this nascent immune system to say, okay, well, this is the world we're in and this is what we've got to watch out for. And we're finding that these children that are born through C-section have all sorts of immunological deficits, have sensitivities to foods, have inflammatory cascades. They never got it. And so what do you come out in some betadine swab and you're chucked onto some metal wing thing and here you go, you're welcome to the world, kid. And so the functional pediatricians that I've been working with, and this is standard practice now, so for some of you all, this might sound pedestrian, but just in case you haven't heard this, is even if it's a forced C-section, they will go get a swab of like just as much of the vaginal canal secretions as they can. And as soon as the baby is born, they rub it in the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, and they let it settle. So that baby gets that first inoculant from mom's microbiome. And we find that the children who have come through, like, it's one of my first questions. If someone starts talking about something, I was like, were you a C-section baby? How did you know? It's just, there's a cascade of signs and symptoms and kind of chronic inflammatory issues that come with that.
Huge, huge, huge. Remember, everybody always asks, were they ever even imprinted properly? So remember, that's one of the things I talk about. And I think that just kind of hits home on this whole topic. Our next question, they wanted to know, what are your best phrases to help patients understand this oral systemic connection?
So if you look at the digestive tract, it's actually a tube that's running from your mouth to your anus that you feel like is the inside of your body, but it's actually still the outside of your body. So there's a tube that is still the outside of your body running through the middle of your body, and there's a single cell separating you from the outside world. And it's about a tennis court in length of just these cells. And the permeability of that membrane and the sensing, 70% of your immune system is there. And so it's very, very primitive to compartmentalize and say, well, it's just the small intestine. It's the whole tube, it's the pipe, right? So everything changes from mouth, and the pH changes below this sphincter to the next sphincter. And then there's just different regions where different things are happening. And in every stage, things need to work correctly And to not look at the mouth as the primary entry point in that. I mean, obviously starting with the sense of taste, obviously with chewing your food, obviously with priming your body to what's coming, salivary secretions and the enzymatic support that comes with digestion, all the way downstream. And so the fact that this has not been part of the main canon of gut health is silly to me. And so this has to come together. It's one system, and the bones are, firmly embedded in the tissue that is part of the same system. And so, it's just once you kind of like, and I just use the metaphor, it's like, it's the gateway to your health. It is, I mean, where do you think the food goes and where do you think it stays until it comes out? Everything in between is your digestion, assimilation, and your immune system reading and priming. So now I'm not as patient facing anymore, so I'm sure I'd have cooler things to say if I was still seeing 100 people a day. I've become an author and a filmmaker, but I do a lot of podcasts and media where I talk colloquialized stuff, right? On the radio and you always find what sticks. And so, but they have to understand that it's not just about brushing and cleaning their teeth, their gum health, their tongue health, the bacteria in their mouth. But they swallow that every day. And some of the stuff that's like at the ick factor is if you have a pocket of pus, you're swallowing those bacteria every single day. It's like, well, you wouldn't take a spoonful of that voluntarily, but you through ignoring your oral health are doing that, day in, day out.
Love it. Love it. A dental office is treating high-risk pathogens with clinical SRP, so scaling, repaying, laser, etc. In addition, they are doing the adjunctive antibiotics, but they want to know the next step for helping the gut recover from the antibiotics.
Couple of caveats is screen for histamine intolerance, because a lot of the acidophilus, some of the bifidus strains can throw histamine reactions. So and I'm happy to share like our histamine screeners, right? Just a few questions to make sure they're not histamine intolerant. They're going to hate you, right? But then a multi-spectrum high dose probiotic with prebiotics, and I'm happy to share what we use. We just used the most studied strains, and we prescribe those readily, and we're very forthcoming with that. It's like, you need to do this. And again, if they don't have histamine intolerance, we also really double down on saying fermented foods. There are very specific strains and ferments that are important. The butirates are important. But you got to go really high dose and shock the system back into the colonies that need to be there. And there's a bunch of, look, people are arguing about spore-based versus, refrigerated. And there's, in every industry, there's all sorts of argument. I've seen results with all of it. Right, I'm just a pragmatist. So just take a lot of probiotics, but take the right strains, and I'll share it. SIBO is a very different deal. SIBO is a very different deal. And we screen for SIBO. We will send breath tests to the clients' houses. But it's hard because we're not treating these people clinically. We're treating them remotely. Clinically, you're better off doing the breath test inside the GI's office, right? Because you have the methane, you have the hydrogen, and there's sulfur. So you want to come to a definitive answer on that. But the response to SIBO, I can tell you, is if you could avoid the FODMAP foods. We really like the elemental diet. We've seen really good results with that. Biota has a good product for that. It's expensive, but it works because they don't gag. And we do a lot of kind of aromatic botanicals, and there's very targeted SIBO approaches. And SIBO's tough. SIBO's tough. I mean, you have to be very strict with the diet. You got to starve them out, and then you have to take whether you're going the herbal route or the pharma route. It's a bit aggressive. But like there's nowhere else to go but there. So you just have to get after the SIBO, because it damages so much. They end up becoming nutrient deficient. They end up having, their lives get ruined because of SIBO.
Dr. O'Meara kind of put together.
Yes, I also wanted to add, especially with the histamine reaction, unless you do some of the gut testing, food sensitivity testing, you will never know if this person has allergy to egg yolks, and they think they're eating healthy breakfast, but they're actually creating more histamine reaction, and they're coming off of antibiotics. They want to make sure their gut is actually healing. We're putting them on probiotics, but unless we knew we need to eliminate egg yolks, there's whole inflammation that they're adding, trying to be healthy, but they're actually hurting their body. So if an office is going through all of this and we want to actually be able to really help them, I would definitely suggest for that patient to go through a gut test.
And we negotiated, we do so much volume, I mean, thousands a month. So we negotiated like a below wholesale rate. So I could pass that on to y'all for your clinics. I could get you all links for that. It's kind of a no-brainer. For a couple $100, you get gut permeability and 22 foods. And then for, I think it's another 250 on top of that. So it's about 450. They get everything for 176 foods with a consultation with a health coach. And the reason we have to put in the consultation is because people get it and they're like, I don't know. Right. And so you need someone to kind of shepherd them through that lifestyle thing that happens to be, the most important thing, which is how they're living their life. Because I cannot fix a gut problem without fixing the behavior of the person that does this 3 to 5 times a day. And that's been the hardest, squishiest part, right? Is now we're getting into like behavioral psychology.
And I'm just going to keep it really simple for those of you who might feel overwhelmed on the dental side. Dr. Miro's made it really simple. You do a saliva test, you're doing that red complex, you're doing your antibiotics. You can just point them straight to the gut check. They can start right there. And that's the thing, is you don't have to feel overwhelmed and like you have to do all that, because they're going to have a health coach. They're going to have somebody walk them through that. But they have a great probiotic, this whole ProSymbia box that's great for the patient to get them started, that can be customized. And so I'm just going to give them a plug, because that's why we're here, just to make it easy on dental clinicians like myself. How easy can I get my patient that's patient forward, not so much, I'm going to say, provider forward. It's for the patient. Easy to do, and just helping them walk through, again, just true collaboration, that we don't have to be overwhelmed and that I have to know everything. You really don't have to know anything, except that, hey, I want to help get their gut back in check. And I have a great place, right, that we can go to and work together with. So I think that's super. It does this. What is the recommended salivary testing company? Somebody asked about oral genome. I'll let you kind of answer, and then I can tag on to that a little bit. I don't even know if you know oral genome, but we can talk about that.
I don't know oral genome. When we did our homework, we really liked the technology behind Simply Perio, but then we kind of trained our team and our staff to layer that with the gut results. And so what we did is we ended up coming up with our own, so shameless self-plug, Orobiome, which then goes back and then they do the gut and they append it, and then they get the results read. And just to kind of close out that part of it is, if any clinician wants to do this at scale, we can take the patients. I think there's like $100 in it for the clinician. We do the test. Our coaches do the consultations and help them with it, and then they send a report of findings back with everything needed for the dentist. So you've got, they're being very well cared for by functional medicine coaching staff. And they are being the stewardship of the oral side is under Laura and my wife, Dr. Elmira, but then everything just gets referred back to the referring office with, here's what our, recommended protocols are. And then you all, do what you do best, which is the dentistry. And what we do is we've been doing custom boxes and formulations. If you're anything like me, there's 60 boxes, 60 bottles of something somewhere all the time. And I get ushered out of the kitchen because I just get so many supplements in my life. So now we just do, these custom boxes that are just like AM, PM, evening, formulated for every patient based on what they have. And it changes month over month, and they love it because compliance is the biggest challenge we have. And so we give them a custom diet and a custom supplement protocol, and then they get oral care stuff on their side of the fence, and then we send them back to you. So if that's of interest to you, we've made a turnkey solution there, because no one has time to talk to these folks. So we brought people to talk to them and make sure that they're doing their homework and eating right.
Perfect. Yeah, I think if you're looking for any salivary testing company, I always want you to ask, what are they measuring? So they're looking at top 11, they're looking at FN broken down into FA, they're looking at Candida, they're looking at, strep mutans, they're looking at the viral loads. So this test that they're using is a polymicrobial test. And I'm just going to say the testing company that you're asking about is looking at more like a pregnancy test. Yes, no, and they're only looking at one species of bacteria that starts at a very high level. So there could be a lot of false negatives on that. And so we do have to be educated on what are they testing, what are their measurements, what do they actually start measuring at what level. So the test here too that they're using starts at a very low level, around 250 species compared to like 10,000. That's a very different risk level there. And then as well as accuracy, the test they're using is around 100% accuracy. So you'd want to know how accurate is that test. I think those are all very important when you're just looking at testing. So what are they measuring? What's all on there? Is it polymicrobial? What do they start testing at? And what is their accuracy? And that's just good 3 questions to always ask for any test. They're asking, have you been able to wean patients off SSRIs with your protocol plus some airway management? And then there's a second part to that.
Yes. So yeah, and I'm going to answer this carefully because this is now falling under the realm of health coaching for the business, because we're actually we have teledentistry is being done now, and telehealth is being done now, but under the auspices of coaching, what I've instructed my coaches to do is say, hey, work with their doctor. Tell them that, hey, they're doing all this stuff and they might need to titrate their SSRIs up or down. And I mean, week over week, we're getting people that are going to the doctor and they're saying, look, they halved my dose, and it keeps getting better. And so there's just a tie into what you said that ties into this question too, is again, don't fall into the trap of looking at bacteria only, folks, because I could get a read of a bunch of big nasty buggers and be like, oh man, look at all this stuff in this person's mouth or this person's gut. But if I don't look at the foods that their immune system is telling us they already have sensitivities to, like this is where the fire is starting, you're creating a dysbiotic environment every time you do it. And you could do all the probiotics you want, you're going to end up chasing your tail. And so really, really being careful around the food sensitivity profiles, I've found not only resolves what you're reading downstream on whether it's a 200 species or 10,000 species test, the thing gets cleaner. But that's also where I'm seeing results on airway obstruction. It's like, wow, I could breathe again. Yeah, because your system is less inflamed, because you don't have redundant tissue that is so swollen that's forcing you to snore like that. And so there's just so much leverage in the simplest part, which is the avoidance of the thing your body said is poison.
Love it. Love it. Just a few more here. I think somebody's asking if there's alternative protocols for patients who are antibiotic adverse or allergic. And I think that kind of probably falls under what we were just kind of going through. But anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's actually we've come a long way with this, because I had to start this program under the auspices of health coaching. The health coaches can't prescribe that, right? And so I would have to send it over to the doctors to prescribe it, and it was just too much work. And let's face it, telehealth is about erectile dysfunction and maybe one other thing. There's not a very well deployed industry of functional medicine doctors doing telehealth. We looked for it 5 years ago, we couldn't find it. There's a huge gap in the industry, and we're trying to solve for that. And so we had to solve for a lot of these problems with health coaching, which means what botanicals, aromatic substances, herbs can this individual take that would be natural, antibiotic, antifungal, antibacterial, and so the berberines, the oreganos, and so there are well-articulated protocols for people that are sensitive to antibiotics that I'm happy to share with whoever asked that question.
Wonderful. I think that's kind of what the other the second piece was that is like, what do you say to those patients? But I think that's exactly what you say. And more of it is testing to see what is specific for them, helping them in some of these other areas. How often do you test was part of that too, just I think overall, and I don't know if they're asking for gut, how often do you test or saliva, but whatever you want to answer about that.
I'll defer the saliva to you all. For gut, we do 6 months on the food sensitivity and the gut permeability. And at the 2 month mark, we do the GI maps and a detailed microbiome analysis. If I had my druthers and everything was free, I would test everything every 3 months and keep going. It's just the stuff's expensive and it's out of pocket, right? So we have to be very conscious of their pocketbooks. And, you know, it's like, if you can't afford the toothpaste I recommend, I'd rather you do that and then get another retest, right?
Love it, love it. I think Dr. Almira, we've kind of gone on to kind of retest protocols, and you can add or correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody's using antibiotics, we really want to make sure, did the products, the antibiotics, the treatment, did that work? And so we test right after the antibiotic usage. We want to make sure that the treatment and antibiotics worked. Otherwise, we need to probably jump on some other testing a little bit sooner, or intervene even maybe in the dental piece if we weren't able to get to the source of the infection, break up that microbiome. So I personally like to test at 15 days. If you do 14 days, if you're doing 10 days, you would do 11 days. To kind of go from there, confirm that we did break up the biofilm, the antibiotics did work, the patient took them. I think that's really what I'm saying there, and I want to be clear about that, because a lot of people who haven't worked on the medical side sometimes forget, in the dental world, people don't always pick up their antibiotics, let alone take them correctly. So a lot of confirmation. And then from there, it's kind of what Dr. Pedram was saying, is like, 3 months is a great thing, which we do in the dental side, right? We do our 4910, our, recare visits. We do those on a regular basis, that then you can kind of find what testing, if they're still clear for me at their 3 months, then sometimes I just go to that yearly testing, because now they're able to do that. Dr. Almira, I know just with what we kind of started with that 15 days. Anything you want to add? I know sometimes they're not always able, they're 3 months, 6 months. How do you feel about that, or add to that?
Especially if they, I would say, if they not in the any red complex present, then after they can actually be pushed back to a 3 month protocol, because then in conjunction we will be testing their gut as well. And the initial KBMO gut testing that was done in the beginning of their 0 day that they came into the funnel, then at the 6 months mark, they will get their gut permeability tested as well, and their oral health as well. So then we're going to combine both those tests at the 6 months mark. Because if we don't see the LPS, if you don't see the permeability, if you fix the permeability in the gut and you fix the permeability in the oral, then you can just move them off and have them be tested every year. Now they're on a protocol just to make sure, if every year testing, we just don't want to go back.
Perfect. And this may be for you, Dr. Almir, as well. They're asking, do you generally prefer doing 6 months of gut work before or after the antibiotics for the red complex?
I would say for the red complex, as soon as we see at present, we at least want to do 1 to 2 months of their gut treatment first, because by the time they go back to the dental visit, I know when they get their deep cleaning done, all those bacteria are going to end up, and we all know it's going to go into the bloodstream. They have to take their antibiotics 24 hours before their deep cleaning, but at least I know when the antibiotics end up in their bloodstream, I have an actual strong person. I've taken them off of the histamine reacting food, so the inflammation in their body is a lot lower by the time they go to their deep cleaning appointment with their dentist, and we'll see a lot better results at the end of it too.
Perfect. And I do think after is really going to be on some, that's really individual, kind of like both of our Dr. Sojais are saying. It's like, right, if somebody started off, I'm going to say like a mess. It's not a technical medical term, but has a lot going on. I mean, if we had yeast and everything you could see, then even after, lacing, it could take a year's work. But I think we just have to understand that at least, I love what you're saying, Dr. Almira, we're getting at least a month or 2 months before we bring them in for that aggressive treatment. That way we're building them up, get them to that point, they're going to get a much better outcome, and then we're building them back up after. And that usually is, can take anywhere again from 1 to 3 months. Most people need that good 90 days, and that's why we like that 90-day post testing after the initial one if they did or needed antibiotics. So I think just that 3-month rule is really great to kind of keep in the back of all our minds. We will drop in. I think we'll probably send out, Kim is on here as well for IDM, just an email with some of their links. Both doctors are being so generous in giving you access to some of these docu-series, just the very beginning, a couple of the beginning formats. I think they're great to be able to even to show to patients. A lot of people are asking about, how do I communicate? How do I explain this? And I feel like that's what you've done so well, is being able to give us patient-friendly docu-series and information to help explain that it's not just coming from this dental provider, that you've been able to provide so much information that way. So we will provide a follow-up email with a lot of these links, just where you can get the gut check. I know a lot of people are asking over and over, but any last questions? I know a lot of people are saying thank you. Do you work with an allergist as well? That was another one.
We have, I can say that our gut program, a lot of folks who have worked with an allergist already have gone down that route. When you're talking about IgE mediated response, it is what it is. And, we do have people that come in with kind of severe mast cell activation and all that. But the part of the part that's been in the blind spot, I think that needs to come out and be really skylined at this point, is the IgA, IgG mediated response to foods that have the 3-day latency. Those are causing a lot more problems than we originally thought. Someone falling over after eating shrimp at the restaurant, that's pretty stark, it's pretty obvious. And they probably know that they have that problem already in their adult life. It's the people who are in their 50s that still don't know they have a sensitivity to tomatoes, and that's why they've had their eczema or their migraines or their bleeding gums, for this matter, right? That's the stuff that we're really uncovering, that's just got a lot of treasure, a lot of aha in it.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, I'm gonna let you guys kind of end here. I am just so excited to offer this to our community. I can't thank both of you doctors enough. I didn't highlight Michelle Melky on here. If she can wave her hand, just for those of you on the dental side. She is a great connection through helping both sides. She is a facilitator between Simply Perio. So if that oral biome test, either through Urban Monk or through Simply Perio, is available, but also how to get to them besides myself if I'm busy through here, or you didn't get all the links or missed, I just want you to know you do have another personal contact. So Michelle, kind of wave your hand out there. If people can see you or unmute, say hi. I'll give her a minute to maybe unmute there, Kim, and just so people can see a name with a face. There she is. So I just, you have another side in our community that collaborates in, between, to help make those connections. If you are a dentist already testing and you're looking for this and you want to be able to connect, she's that connection. And vice versa, our medical side a lot of times are asking, hey, I don't want to be fully responsible for saliva tests, but I also want to collaborate and get some of these other things done just to have that access. So thank you so much. I appreciate our community. We'll be off. Remember, it's every other month, and we will send a follow-up email. Thank you both, Dr. Shojai and Shojai. I appreciate you. It's been amazing. Thank you for being here for our community.
Yeah, happy to help anyone in any way. Just reach out. We have a type form there. That way we can at least just get you anything you need, and resources, anything you need will help you in your practice.
Great. That's in the chat if you're missing it. So make sure you just kind of look at our chat. We'll leave that up for a few minutes so you can go there, get that link. You're here tonight, have access, and be safe, and see you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.